Today's lesson is Hidden Hands, the origins of the hand-in waistcoat pose. Hi, everybody. I'm Roger.
And I'm Mike.
And today we're talking about something called hidden hands. That means you can't see the hands of someone. Maybe they're holding a gun or something, so they have hidden hands. But we're talking more about a pose that you can make when somebody takes your picture or when somebody paints a portrait of you. And, of course, we've seen this in a lot of photographs and in paintings. Someone has their hand in their waistcoat. It's covered by the pocket, you could say. So this is the origin of the hand-in waistcoat pose, why people do this and where this comes from.
Okay. I'm thinking, of course, of Napoleon, those famous pictures of him. And he's kind of got his hand, or the fingers of his hand at least, stuck inside his waistcoat. A waistcoat is sometimes also called a vest. It's what a man might wear if he's wearing a three-piece suit. Women can wear them as well. But typically with a three-piece suit, you have the pants, you have the jacket, and under the jacket, you have that sleeveless kind of jacket that goes over the shirt. Under the jacket, that is a vest or a waistcoat or a waistcoat, if you want to use the old British pronunciation. We do sometimes see it, as I said, if you go to the tailor and you get yourself a three-piece suit, that will be the third piece. Generally, it's not common so much anymore. There's a much more casual way of dressing. But if you look at old pictures, especially from people more than 100 years ago, for example, waistcoats were very common. And in some of those formal paintings, yes, they would sometimes stick their hands in between the buttons, right? When they button up the waistcoat, they'll stick it in between the buttons, kind of hiding their fingers as if they're scratching their stomach or something like that. But it was kind of this dignified look, and it's a kind of an unusual one. I mean, if you dressed in that style and stuck your hand in there, people would immediately say, hey, you're Napoleon, like in a Halloween costume or something like that. But it's not something most people would do these days. But yeah, where did it come from, and why, for at least a few hundred years, did so many people stand in their formal paintings with that pose?
It's a good question, and of course it's applicable to people nowadays because we're always looking for new ways to pose for photographs. So let's read on. Let's listen to the first part of our lesson for today, and we'll be right back.
Hidden hands, the origins of the hand-in waistcoat pose. Do you ever find yourself unsure of what to do with your hands when the camera clicks? If you're tired of peace signs and finger hearts, here's something else you can try: the hand-in waistcoat pose.
So we begin the first part of our lesson with a question. Do you ever find yourself unsure of what to do with your hands when the camera clicks? I oftentimes have problems figuring out what to do with my hands when I'm giving a speech, for example. Do I do a lot of gestures? Do I hold the microphone? Do I put my hands in my pocket? But of course, nowadays, when people take your picture, you might be kind of curious about what to do with your hands. Should I flash that peace sign? Should I make a gesture or something like that? And the next line here says, if you're tired of peace signs and finger hearts, here's something else you can try: the hand-in waistcoat pose. Yes, this does sound very common. Of course, nowadays we all have digital cameras, and every time we go out, we need to have our picture taken in front of this or in front of that. And of course, we oftentimes flash those peace signs or put the peace sign behind someone's head to make them look like a rabbit or something. And of course, nowadays, finger hearts are quite popular, where you put your thumb and your index finger together to form a heart. Or you could actually take both your hands and put them together to make a heart that way. And after a while, those things get kind of boring. I'm so sick of posing with a peace sign or a finger heart. What else can I do to pose for an interesting photograph?
There you go. I'll try to look like a 19th century general. Well, who knows if this is going to catch on, but let's find out where it came from in the second part of our article. This unique gesture, often seen in portraits of men, involves a person tucking one hand partially or fully inside their clothing. Its origins can be found in ancient Greece, where it was considered a sign of politeness. In the 18th century, the pose became popular again when it was used by artists who drew inspiration from ancient Greek art. For example, the French Emperor Napoleon struck the pose in several portraits painted by Jacques-Louis David. That said, Art critics have also suggested that some artists may simply have found it difficult to paint hands. Another theory suggests that the pose may also hold a deeper meaning, serving as a hidden symbol among members of the Freemason secret society. Advocates of this theory believe that the gesture enables members of the society to easily identify each other.
大家好，第二部分我们来看到单字 involve， 它是动词，意思是包含、需要，也可以是涉及或是牵涉的意思。例如 Testing the vaccine will involve a small trial of just a few hundred people at first. 测试疫苗的一开始会包含对数百人所做的小型测试。又或者说 Cindy likes to get involved in as many of the events at her local temple as possible. Cindy 喜欢尽可能多多参与她家附近庙宇的活动。接下来介绍动词 tuck， 它指的是把点点点藏入，或是把衣料的下摆或是纸张的边缘塞入点点点的意思。例如 In this story, the pirates tucked the treasure in a hidden cave. 在这则故事中，海盗们将宝藏藏在一个隐秘的洞穴里。或者 Jane folded her worksheet and then tucked it inside her textbook. Jane 把她的作业单折起来，然后塞进课本里。接着看到 partially， 它是副词，意思是部分的或是在某种程度上。举例来说 The boss is unhappy that the project will only be partially completed by the end of this month. 老板对该专案在本月底只能部分完成而感到不满。又或者说 Although the house painting was only partially done, the work had to stop when it started to rain. 虽然房子油漆只完成了一部分，但因为下雨而不得不停止。再来是名词 inspiration， 表示灵感、启发或是鼓舞人心的人事物。例如 As a fashion designer, Sheila tends to draw inspiration from traditional costumes. 作为一名时尚设计师 Sheila 经常从传统服饰中汲取灵感。又或者说 The general's speech was an inspiration to all of the soldiers. 将军的演说激励了全体士兵。下一个介绍片语 That said， 它指的是话说回来或是尽管如此。可以说 People criticized the video game's graphics. That said, the gameplay was good. 人们批评这个电玩游戏的制图。话说回来，游戏操作上倒是不错。再看一个例子 I will not be available to help you in person this weekend. That said, you can still give me a call if you have questions. 我这个周末没办法亲自去帮你的忙。话虽如此，如果你有任何问题，还是可以打电话来找我。接下来我们看到 advocate， 这个名词有提倡者或是拥护者的意思。例如 Bonnie is a fearless advocate for human rights. Bonnie 是一位勇敢的人权倡议者。或是 A group of women's health advocates organized a protest outside of City Hall. 一群妇女健康提倡者在市政府外组织了抗议活动。
Okay, let's begin talking about the second part of our article for today. Well, this unique gesture, again, the hand in waistcoat pose, this special or unique or different gesture often seen in portraits of men involves a person tucking one hand partially or fully inside their clothing. So as you mentioned, Mike, you could put the hand in between the front part of your jacket, for example, between the buttons. I think it also could be done with your hand in your pocket. I don't think you want to do it in your pants, though.
No, that would be a little too casual, I would imagine. So it involves, that's part of what we're doing here. When something involves something, that means it's included. But there would be a few different ways. When you tuck something, you're basically hiding it. You're kind of putting it inside something or behind something. You might tuck your hand in your pocket when you're talking to someone in a casual stance. You might tuck your head inside your jacket, lift your collar up a little bit if you're cold on a windy day. And you're partially or fully doing this inside your clothing. So maybe it's just the fingers. Maybe it's the full hand. found. I think the full hand would really just look like you're scratching your stomach, so I'm not sure I would go all the way. Partially meaning only part of it, or only some of it, only a fraction of it, you could also say. Its origins can be found in ancient Greece, where it was considered a sign of politeness. Very interesting. Maybe the idea that you can't see my hands, so I'm not going to hit you or slap you or something like that. I don't know why hands, or having your hands be shown or exposed was considered rude, but this was a sign of politeness and also probably a sign of good breeding, good manners. You know how to behave well in public like fancy people do. And then much later in the 18th century, so that's the 1700s, this is where we're probably most familiar with it in a lot of those paintings of great and powerful people. And so in the 18th century, it kind of made a comeback. The pose became popular again when it was used by artists who drew inspiration from ancient Greek art. And when you're inspired by something, you're getting ideas from that. You're using those ideas as sort of a launching pad or a starting point, and you're adding your own ideas, your own interpretation of them. But, you know, a lot of the things that were popular in the Greek and Roman time kind of came back in the architecture and the style and many other ways later on in the 17th, 18th centuries and times like that. So the artists at that time were getting a lot of their ideas from ancient Greek art. And there's probably the most famous example, which we talk about next.
Indeed. It's kind of interesting here that we're using the word drew here. That's the past tense of the verb to draw, which is what artists do. They draw pictures or they paint pictures. But in this particular case, though, it's referring to getting inspiration. They drew inspiration from ancient Greek art so that they could draw new pictures or paint new pictures. And again, as you said, we've got an example here. For example, the French Emperor Napoleon struck the pose in several portraits painted by Jacques-Louis David. And indeed, when you're posing for a picture, you strike a pose. That means you arrange your body in such a way so that you can be photographed or painted or whatever. So Napoleon struck that pose, and again, we often think of that portrait of Napoleon with his hand stuck inside his vest.
That said, art critics have also suggested that some artists may simply have found it difficult to paint hands. Very interesting. So that said, we often use this at the beginning of a sentence that follows something else. And the first thing is probably what most people would say. It's the one you would expect to hear. The one that's the most common explanation. But then afterwards, that said, here's another idea. Here's another thought. Here's another point of view or another way of looking at it. So that said, even though this is something that might have been made popular by Napoleon and he stood that way, and so of course Jacques-Louis David painted him that way, well, that could be true, but, however, art critics have also suggested that some artists may simply have found it difficult to paint hands. I'm not good at painting hands. I always make the fingers too long, or I paint 6 fingers because I stopped counting or something like that. So I'm just going to hide the hands inside the jacket. It's too casual, and actually men's pants back then often didn't have pockets. It's too casual to put the hands in the pockets as well, so I'll hide them in the waistcoat. Because actually I know from a lot of artists and from even trying to draw myself quite badly, hands are hard. It is really hard to draw hands that look natural because, of course, we see our hands all the time. So any little mistakes really do show up. So maybe it was just these artists were kind of hiding the weak spot in their skill set.
Well, you could just draw a square and then draw 4 rectangles up and 1 to the side or something, but that's too simple. Hands, of course, are quite complicated with all the joints and all the folds and things like that. So indeed, this may be an idea as to why people pose like that, because hands were simply difficult to paint. Another theory suggests that the pose may also hold a deeper meaning, serving as a hidden symbol among members of the Freemason secret society. Now, Freemasons, those are people who are in these clubs, these secret societies, and they get together and have meetings and do certain things. And it's kind of secret, okay? You're not supposed to know about these societies, or you're not supposed to let other people know that you're a member of the society. the Freemasons, and so perhaps it was a way for them to communicate with each other without other people knowing what they were saying.
Interesting. So advocates of this theory believe that the gesture enables members of the society to easily identify each other. Okay, I don't know about that one, but yes, it's true. Freemasonry was quite a big thing. It's still around. I think a lot of the founding fathers of America were Freemasons, George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, people like that. And so advocates of this theory, if you're an advocate of something in this sense, you're kind of a supporter of this theory. You agree with this theory. You're like, yep, that's the explanation. That's why. There might be different opinions, but if you're an advocate of a certain opinion or a certain political position, that's the one you support. That's the one that you agree with. They believe, so the people who support this, it's really just a Freemason secret symbol. They believe that this gesture, putting your hand inside your waistcoat like this or being painted like that, enables members of the society to easily identify each other. I'm not sure. It's not that secret if we're talking about it now. So if it's a secret way of identifying each other, it didn't really work.
It is kind of bizarre indeed. And so there you have it, the possible 3 sources for this particular pose. Let's move on now to the third and final part of our lesson and see what it has to do with you.
So the next time you're asked for a picture, why not give the hand in waistcoat pose a try? With its long history, multiple meanings, and possible link to a secret society, it'll certainly make you stand out from the crowd.
最后第3部分看到片语 stand out from 名词，它的意思是从点点点脱颖而出。举例来说 Of all the people who performed, Lucy stood out from the rest. 在所有演出的人当中 Lucy 比其他人出色。最后一个例子 Brad's height made him stand out from his classmates. Brad 的身高使他在同学中鹤立鸡群。
Okay, so here in the third part of the lesson, it says, so the next time you're asked for a picture, why not give the hand in waistcoat pose a try? Yes, indeed, as I said earlier, people are posing for selfies or pictures all the time, and we want to look different or we want to look our best. So yeah, why don't you try this? Try putting your hand in your waistcoat and give that pose a try. Of course, if you're outside having fun, you might be wearing a t-shirt or something like that, so there's no place to put your hand. Maybe you could put it in your pocket or down your collar or something like that. Who knows? Use your imagination. With its long history, multiple meanings, and possible link to a secret society, it'll certainly make you stand out from the crowd. So indeed, it does have a long history, and it's got multiple meanings. If something's multiple, we have a lot of that different sort of things. Okay, there are multiple types of food that you can enjoy in Taiwan's night markets, for example.
Very, very interesting. So it'll certainly make you stand out from the crowd. It'll make you very noticeable. It'll make you kind of special or different or something like that. While all your friends are making peace signs, finger hearts, holding their hands under their face in that kind of checkmark thing, and you're standing there looking like Napoleon, it'll definitely make you unique and individual and certainly stand out from the crowd, easy to pick out, and a lot of people might say, why are you standing like Napoleon?
Okay, that brings us to the end of our explanation for today. Let's listen now to Hanny.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 我们来看今天的文法重点。课文第2部分的第2句有提到藏手礼姿势的起源可追溯至古希腊。那我们看到 Ancient Greece 后方它是接逗号 where it was considered a sign of politeness。 那这里的 where 就相当于 in which， 我们用 which 来代指 Ancient Greece， 所以呢 where it was considered a sign of politeness 这样的关系子句就是在补充说明在古希腊，在那里啊，它被视为一种礼貌的象征。好，那这边我们就来介绍一下 where 当关系副词的用法。where 当关系副词相当于介系词加 which， 像是 at which 或是 in which 等等。 那可以引导关系子句来修饰或补述说明跟地点相关的先行词。好，那第一种用法是当这个先行词是明确特定的地点时，那就不需要限定它的范围啦。这时候关系子句的功能就是要对先行词来做补充说明，那我们要用逗号把这个补充说明的部分跟主要子句隔开，这是属于非限定用法。像课文就是这个用法，它在 where 的前面加了逗号，把这个补充说明的关系子句隔开来。好，那介绍第二个用法是当这个先行词它是非特定不明确的地点时，那就要用限定用法， where 的前面不加逗号。那这时候呢，关系子句是用来限定先行词的范围，像是 This is a place where you can feel a sense of belonging， 这是一个让你能有归属感的地方。那么先行词 a place 一个地方是不明确的地点嘛，所以我们后面紧接着关系子句来限定它的范围，表达是一个让你能有归属感的地方。好，那么同样在课文第二部分有提到另外一个理论，是认为这个姿势可能有更深的意义，作为共济会秘密社团成员的隐藏符号。那这个理论的支持者认为这个姿势让该会的成员能够容易辨认彼此。文中用到 advocate 去表达这种支持者、提倡者、拥护者的那种语义。那我们来补充它的字根。好，看到 VOC、VOK、VOW 这一类字根，它带有 call、speak、sound、voice 等等的意思，是表达说话、叫喊或声音。那在 advocate 这个字当中，它的字首 ad 表示朝向，字根 voc 表示说话，ate 可以当动词字尾或名词字尾。那同学们可以联想，对着大众发言的人就是去大力提倡某事的人，所以呢 advocate 当名词就表示提倡者、拥护者。那当动词要注意是念作 advocate， 它表示拥护、提倡或是主张。好，那以上今天重点整理，我们来回顾今天单字吧。
Involve.Planning the event will involve setting the schedule and sending out invitations. Tuck. She decided to tuck the note into the pocket of his jacket as a surprise. Partially. The curtain was only partially closed, allowing a bit of sunlight to enter the room. Inspiration. The lovely landscapes she saw on her trip served as the inspiration for her new painting. Advocate.Although Andrew claims to be an advocate for the environment, he buys lots of plastic products. Multiple. Dr. Gordon has received multiple awards for her contributions to the field of science.
Discussion Starter starts now!
Here's our discussion starter for today. The question is, would you consider using the hand in waistcoat pose in photographs? Why or why not?
Well, I'd say sure, I'd be willing to give it a try because it is a classic pose, but only if I'm wearing a waistcoat and only if I'm in a formal setting like that. You know, if it was me and my partner standing in front of our new business and this is kind of a historical shot, I might kind of pose that way because you often see that in old paintings of people back in the old days opening a bank or a new business, something like that. But if it was just me and my friends at a picnic, no, I don't think so. It wouldn't really fit the situation.
Well, no, I don't think I'd consider using that pose, given that Napoleon struck that pose many years ago. So if I were to do that, someone might see it and say, "Oh, who do you think you are? You think you're Napoleon or something? Aren't you snobby?" So I wouldn't want to be accused of being a snob that way. I will never pose with my hand stuck inside my waistcoat.
Well, that brings us to the end of another edition of our program, and please make sure you join us again next time. From all of us here, I am Mike.
I am Roger. See you next time.